Hello students, welcome back. So in this session, the topics I'll be covering would be meaning of scope, meaning of lifetime, and also what do you mean by local and global variable, and what's the difference between these two. So what exactly is a scope? Well, scope, it determines, it tells you where your variable can be accessed in your code. Just because you define your variable at one point in your code does not mean that you can access your code at any given point in your code. There are some places you can access those variables, some places you cannot. And that is determined by scope. So let's understand local scope first. In this instance, your variables are defined inside of a function. So suppose I define a function, greet. And in this case, I create a variable message, and this is the message right here, hello from inside the function, and then I print the message. That's all it does. This is all this greet does. Then I invoke the function greet. I call the function greet, and when I call it, it prints out hello from inside the function because it creates the variable. Then it prints the variable out. Now, what if I try to access this variable outside the function? Let's do that. Now, if I try to run this code, it's going to throw an error because this message is not defined. This message is only defined inside the function, not outside the function. So now if I define the message over here and outside, that's going to work just fine. But if I don't define it, I get an error. So in this instance, this message right here, this is your local variable. This is defined only inside the function. Now let's redo the same example. Let me run this. Now let's redo the same example over here now. In this case, everything is same, but now I'm defining the message over here. And this message is different than the one on the top. In this case, message is now I'm defined outside the function. So now when I run this, it's going to print this. First, it's going to execute this greet. It's going to print this right here. It's going to print hello from inside the function. And then it's going to execute this line of code. And now you can print out the message, and you can see that now it prints out the message, and this message variable is different now because it is accessing this variable. So this is your local variable. As soon as you leave this greet, as soon as you exit the greet function, this variable is destroyed. It's no longer part of it. Now let's understand this concept of lifetime of a local variable. Well, suppose I have a function counter, and I define my x equal to 10. That is, this is a local variable, local to counter, and then I print inside function, and it prints out the value of x. Now when I call this function counter, it's going to print this message inside function 10 right here. So the lifetime of this particular variable x is only as long as you're inside the function. As soon as you leave the function, this x is destroyed. It does not exist. So over here, if I try to print x over here and I run this, it's going to throw me an error. Name x is not defined. And that's because this x has disappeared. Now when I run this again, and it's going to work just fine. So variable x is created when the function starts, and variable x is destroyed as soon as your function ends. Global scope. In this instance, your variables, they're defined outside of all functions. So let's understand this through an example. So in this case, I have a variable city that is defined as Moscow. And then I'm defining the function show city, and then it prints out the city right here. And then I call the function show city. And then I also print out this variable again one more time. So when I run this, it's going to print out city Moscow. It calls this function. It prints out city Moscow. And then it prints out accessing globally city. Accessing globally and prints out Moscow over here. Now, if you notice something interesting over here, in this function, I did not define the city. The city was defined outside. So one of the advantage when you define a function like this is that it can be accessed globally. So by defining a function like this, now this particular variable city can be accessed from within the function and also from outside the function. That is why it is called global variable. Now let's understand how you can modify a global variable. Suppose my global variable is count, value is equal to 0, and I define a function increase. In this increase, it takes the global variable count and it increments it by 1. And then I call the increase function one time and then another time twice. And then I print my final count. When I run this, I am going to get an error. And the reason I'm getting an error is because I'm trying to change the value of the global variable. I'm trying to modify the value of the global variable inside the function increase. That is not allowed. So the way you do this thing is by using the keyword global count. Now you're telling the function that, hey, there is a variable called count and this is global. Now you can modify that. So now if I run this, it's going to work just fine. It actually calls the global count, and then you increment, it allows you to increment the value of count, and then you call increase once time, you call increase twice, and then when I print my final count, it prints out 2. This way, by using your global keyword inside the function, I'm able to access a global variable and also modify the variable.